Here are 5 reasons why the birth rate in the United States is declining. This is based on my empirical research as to why I believe women of childbearing age are having fewer children. This is based on what I've been seeing out there on social media and being a woman of childbearing age. So take this list with a grain of salt and do your own research to why the population is dwindling, because there was a lot of propaganda a few years ago that there are too many people on the earth. So now we're seeing that the birth rate is declining, not only in the United States, but also in Europe. But we're only going to touch on the United States in this video. The US birth rate has been declining since the Great Recession, which happened in the late 2000s. The average woman is having today about 1.4 children, down from 3 in the 1950s, and significantly lower than the replacement rate theory of 2.1. The replacement rate was a theory by economists that said that every household needed to have 2.1 children in order to maintain a stable and a sustainable population in the United States. So American women on average are having about 1.4 children. Now, this drop in the population is scaring lawmakers as well as corporations, because there's not going to be enough people in the workforce, A, to fill certain jobs, and B, working people to support social security programs and other social benefit programs that the elderly or the aging population will begin to rely on in the next few years. And so an aging society means there are more older people relying on government programs like Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, and fewer people working, paying taxes, paying into those programs so that the older population can enjoy those social benefits. This also means that certain industries are not going to have enough of a robust workforce, and really important industries like agriculture, healthcare, there are not going to be enough doctors, nurses, healthcare providers. There's not going to be enough farmers, and there's not going to be enough truckers, as well as other industries that deal with the infrastructure of the United States. As we see now, a lot of the infrastructure type of jobs, a lot of those vocations don't have enough of a workforce, and the infrastructure is crumbling right now. So just imagine 20 years from now, a whole generation happens and there's even fewer people going into those industries. This video is in response to David Skyward, the congressman from Arizona. He went before Congress a few days ago ringing a 5-alarm fire about the imperils of the dwindling American population. And he was alerting Congress and perhaps the corporations, like, we're in dire straits. We have to do something about the dwindling population. Like, it is upon us. There will not be enough of a robust workforce in order to pay into the Social Security benefits. What he failed to mention while he was on the floor was the reasons why women are not having children. And he's been in Congress for several terms. I think this is his 7th term. He failed to mention that there's reasons why women are not having children. Most women don't wake up and say, I don't want to have children. I think the economy in the United States has gotten to a point where it becomes so tenuous for many women to have children. And so his argument left out the realities of why many families are deciding not to have children. And many of it has to do with economics. Before we get into the 5 reasons why women are not having children in the United States, this is the legal code, and on this channel we discuss a variety of legal topics, including social policies. We also discuss and do compare and contrast as to what other countries are doing better than the United States. So if you're thinking about moving abroad, I like this channel to be a hub where you can get information about the public policies that are offered in other countries that may incentivize you to say, that's a place that I want to consider moving to because I like A, B, and C policies. So if you like that sort of thing, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and of course share with anyone else you think will find value. I will also link the congressman's video about the imperils of the dwindling US population. So if you want to check that out, it's not really long, it's about 42 minutes long, but it's really important to see what's coming down the pike and how government is going to respond to the dwindling population. The United States is the only industrialized, wealthy nation without maternity leave. Let that sink in. The only nation, considering the wealth, the girth, the influence of the United States, it's still in the dark ages when it comes to maternity leave, which leads me to reason one why women are not having children, and that has to do with the lack of governmental programs and protection that incentivize women to have children. Many people think that FMLA is a protection that should incentivize women to have children. FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, is only a job protection law that says if you go on maternity leave, this corporation, this job will be ready for you once you come back from maternity leave for the 16 weeks. But it's paid without leave unless you work for an exceptional company that offers you paid maternity leave based on you paying into the program or them offering it to you, or if you live in a state which mandates paid maternity leave. I think there's a few states that offer that. I think New York is one of them that offers that. But I'll list of states that offer paid maternity leave in the notes of this video. So again, the United States is the only industrialized nation to not have maternity leave. United States is also unique because it's only one of 7 other countries that do not offer maternity leave. The other nations that don't offer maternity leave include Micronesia, Palau, Tonga, Papua New Guinea, Marshall Island, 3 of which these nations have some sort of free association relationship with the United States, where they're not considered citizens, but they have a non-immigrant status when it comes to the United States. Needless to say, they have some sort of connection with the United States. So it comes at no surprise that these nations that have a relationship with the United States as a free association state also do not have maternity leave. The other nations have their own system or relationship with New Zealand and Australia, and I'm not exactly sure why they don't have maternity leave, but they don't. So that's to say that United States is not in good company when it comes to their abysmal and embarrassing policies regarding maternity leave, paid sick leave, or any other leave that requires people to care for themselves and their loved ones. Because of the poor policies that the United States, this shows that the United States has done nothing to encourage women to have children. If at a governmental level, the United States is not protecting and encouraging women to have children and be working mothers and providing services and incentives, why would women want to have children if all they get is 16 weeks off with no pay and just their job back after the 16 weeks? So many women are forced to give birth, drive home, be discharged the day after giving birth, drive home, and start back work 16 weeks later, where many of them are still bleeding. Of course, they're still adjusting physiologically, physically, and mentally to this new addition to their family. But the government has not put in any parameters to support women and families. Women are going to understand that there's implicit and explicit discouragement to have children because there's no governmental programs to say, we care that you have children and here's the infrastructure to support you for having children, which includes paid leave. In contrast, many countries in Europe have really extensive and robust policies to support their women having children as well as being part of the workforce. In many countries, especially in Europe, maternity leave is a statutory right. It's not to be negotiated corporation to corporation like it's done in the United States, where one corporation could say, oh, it's too costly for us to have maternity leave. Whereas in Europe, this is the baseline. Everyone understands that maternity leave is a statutory right given to every woman, and it's not negotiated based on whatever corporate entity a woman is working. Why does the US have such poor maternity leave and family leave policies. This has to do with what happened after World War II. After World War II, most of Europe, Western Europe, was decimated. Not only the enormous amount of deaths, but the enormous amount of damage and bombardment. And so Europe was on its knees. So Europe needed to rebuild during this time. So what Europe did is says, we need as many people as part of the workforce as possible, because men and women died, soldiers died, nurses died. Europe was decimated. So they needed as many people rebuilding Europe as possible. And the way to do that was to incentivize women to also join the workforce. And the way they did that was provide maternity leave and family leave and allow flexibility for women to work as well as be mothers. So this led the way, and it set a precedent over the last 60 years where Europe has only improved their maternity leave policies. Whereas the United States, World War II was fought on foreign territory. And so when the American soldiers returned home, the corporation says, thanks to the women, thanks for what you did, thanks for holding up the economy and the country while our men were fighting war, but you could go back to being stay-at-home wives. So the women were discouraged from being part of the workforce and sent home. And instead, their husbands rejoined, took those jobs back where women were working, and there was no shift or transition to include women in the workforce. And so corporations did not have any incentive to allow for maternity leave or for family leave policies, because they pretty much said to the women, we don't need you anymore, we just need the men. And so from there was no transition to include women in the workforce as the 70s and 80s started happening, and more women were joining the workforce and getting more education and getting higher degrees. There was no transition. So these corporations are still operating from this like 1950s, 1940s model where most of our workforce is men, whereas now we see it being more equal percentage-wise, but the corporations have not adjusted for those numbers. So in Europe, mandatory 14 weeks is the minimum a woman can receive for maternity leave, most of which many countries allow 2 weeks pre-birth, where a woman is required to stop working. So they have that 2 weeks prior to delivery, and then either 12 weeks at a minimum or more that a woman is allowed to remain home. And a lot of these countries also have doulas, birthing centers, and midwives that go home with these women and teach them about the early days of motherhood and what it would be required, and assist them in breastfeeding and feeding and things like that. So there's all sorts of infrastructure that European countries offer their women that the United States offers nothing. The United States women are just discharged, sent a bill for $13,000 for childbirth, and expect to be back at work 16 weeks later. Also in Europe, during paid maternity leave, most countries provide allowances that replace over 50% of an employee's previous salary. Some of them even offer full to close payments, while some European countries cover flat rate payments like Ireland. In Ireland, expectant mothers can take up to 42 weeks of maternity leave. They are entitled to 26 weeks of paid maternity leave and 16 weeks of additional unpaid maternity leave, which can begin immediately after the end of the maternity leave. In Austria, another example, expectant mothers are entitled to maternity protection from 8 weeks before the baby is due until 8 weeks after the baby is due, and a pregnant woman must take minimum 16 weeks off in accordance with Austrian regulations. And with a doctor's note, a woman can extend her 16-week maternity leave and is almost always granted. And maternity allowance is based on the expectant mother's last 3 net salary payments and is provided monthly in arrears. Now, Bulgaria is my favorite because Bulgaria offers 410 days of paid maternity leave at 90% of what the woman was making prior to her taking maternity leave. So during that time, she's getting almost her entire salary less 10%. So she gets to stay home for almost a year and a half. Additionally, the woman is entitled to monthly compensation from Social Security, so that supplements her income, so Social Security along with her monthly salary. And fathers are also entitled to 15 days compulsory paternity leave. They must take it, and they're paid 90% of their salary. And fathers are entitled to this right as long as they have completed at least 1 year of work where they're working. When the child in Bulgaria reaches the age of 6 months, the mother and the father can offset the amount of time, the 410 days, and stagger it and alternate it week to week, or however it is appropriate for them between the mother and father, but requires the explicit consent of the mother. So she must provide some sort of documentation saying she's offsetting her maternity leave with the husband. And that's how it's done. These are just a few of examples, just to give you an idea of what other countries are offering. Many countries also send you home after birth with a midwife or a doula, or someone to help you learn about breastfeeding and feeding and the intricacies of that. They help you do grocery shopping if that needs to be done, and clearing up the house. So a lot of support and services are offered in many of the European countries. I'm not going to name all of them here, but I did mention them in my previous video about why women should not have children in the United States. We're going to move on to number 2 as to why women are having fewer children in the US. And one of that is women have more options now than they did 50 years ago. Women have more freedoms, women are more educated, and they perhaps are allowed to really think about whether or not they want to be mothers. There's also the controversy regarding the Dobbs decision, which overruled Roe v. Wade, but even prior to that, unexpected pregnancies and teen pregnancies were also on the decline even before the Dobbs decision. So this shows that women are thinking twice about having children. Number 3, women were never meant to do it alone. As I mentioned, that other countries have been really proactive in providing services and incentives to support working mothers. And so they have sanctioned what it means to, it takes a village. It takes a village is an African proverb that says it takes a village to raise a child. But the village, the concept of village is often seen as something that's esoteric and spiritual and woo-woo. But village actually means infrastructures to support a woman having a child. That means affordable childcare. That means affordable healthcare. That means resources that are available to the woman. Paid time off, that a woman won't end up in abject poverty because she takes time off to raise her children. These are the sorts of things that are constitute village that is absent in the United States culture. The lack of maternity leave and governmental mandated maternity leave sets a precedent and understanding for women that says this government does not care about me having children. It does not care about me. It doesn't care about my family. And so the only thing women can do is resist and say, I'm not going to have children. I'm not going to bear children into a society which doesn't care about them. That's only obvious. This is reason number 4, and this specifically relates to Black women. There's a rhetoric aimed at getting women to have more children. But it rings hollow for many Black women because Black women have a history of sterilization, and their births are seen as suspect and unruly, whereas white motherhood is lauded. So Black women have internalized this have more children, you should have more children, as not applying to them, that their babies are not valued in the same way that white babies have been valued. Couple that with Black women being 3 times more likely to die during childbirth than their white counterparts. So being afraid of dying in the delivery room is a credible and real reason why many Black women are not having children. And this happens to be for women who are college educated, who are having fewer children than their college educated white women counterparts. And lastly, the 5th reason is the cost is too great. The United States is crazy. Everyone right now is clamoring about the cost of living right now, with a dozen eggs being around $6. The cost of food is astronomical. The cost of petrol is astronomical, and people are barely able to sustain themselves. And there was even a poll that said that, I can't remember the poll, but it was done in 2018, where families were polled to say, would they have more children? And many said, we would like to have more children, but it's just cost prohibitive. We could barely afford the children that we have now, and an addition would be a strain. So this ties back into the lack of village infrastructure in the United States that encourages people to make family a priority. Unfortunately, finances is going to be a deterrent for many people who have critical thinking skills, who say, I can't afford to have children, therefore I'm not going to have any or have any more. So right now we're seeing that it's sort of disingenuous for this congressman to get up there and clamor about the imperils of a dwindling society, American population, when all along for the last 50, 60 years, he's been sitting in Congress, and what has he been doing to incentivize and pressure corporations to provide incentives for women to have children? It's sort of moot at this point, because we're dealing with not only millennials not having children, but the generation after them, Gen Z, not having children. So we're having 2 generations of women having fewer and fewer children. So it's going to be interesting what happens in the last 50 years. Like I said, this is going to impact industries, it's going to impact Social Security, and it's going to impact corporations who won't have enough of a robust workforce. With that being said, I believe the solution to all of this, what the United States has been doing, is inviting immigrants from other countries to come to the United States. Yes, I believe an invitation has been sent out to these countries in order for the United States to buffer its population problem. Even though it's masqueraded in front of the media as, oh, these people have come here illegally, I do believe they have been invited, and the United States plans on giving them Social Security numbers so that they can join the workforce in the near future. Because the little stipend benefits that the United States has been putting out to American taxpayer, the earned child credit, where you get like such an insignificant stipend that's supposed to incentivize you to have children, is so insulting. Those tax rebates, the discounts, it's not enough right now. And we are at a critical point where the United States government is going to have to really do an overhaul in its policies in order for the population to be sustained. But at this point, I don't see it happening anytime soon, because we know how these corporations are. Profit, 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 not people, people, people. But ultimately, people are what's going to get us through any of these crises. And I say that all the time. It's really about people, and we lose sight of that. So let me know your thoughts about this video. Leave any comments in the comment section. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And also, after this video, please follow up and watch my video, why women are having, or why women should not have children in the United States, as well as why the United States has no paid maternity leave or sick leave. So don't forget to hop on those videos after this, and I will see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe.